Josh, thanks so much for coming on today. So tell me a little bit about yourself as a coach.
Thanks so much for having me. I am a high performance coach that helps people deal with burnout and overwhelm.
So how did you get here? What led you to this point?
Oh my goodness. A lot of things. I was obsessive about learning from a very young age. I went to college when I was 15 years old.
All right, you can't just say that. You got to give me more. How did you end up going to college at 15, and what did you go to college for?
Yeah, so I started with music. I got a violin at the age of 9, and I was homeschooled. And if you're homeschooled and you can pass the exams in for college in Florida, where I grew up, then you can go to college. So I started going to college, and I decided I wanted to become a rock star, and I had no idea what that meant at the time. And so I decided the closest thing to that was majoring in music. So I majored in music. I stayed until the age of 22. Um, and I got a degree in classical violin performance, and I left a burnout, completely emaciated, anorexic, and I got a job doing manual labor. So that was not the dream that I hoped for at the time.
Really, it rarely is, isn't it? Especially with, you know, the term gifted child gets thrown around a lot, but to start college at 15, I would say that you probably had a pretty good kickstart. What did you do in manual labor?
Yeah, so I started tying wire ropes in knots with my bare hands. So I went from the most delicate job of playing the fingerboard of a violin to if you slip once, you never play the violin again, which was a strange switch. It turned out that ex-cons knew more about how to make a living than I did, and most of the rules that I followed in college did not work in real life. I was a big rule follower. Later on, I learned I was a bit autistic, um, but in a particular way where I was very curious, very open minded, loved to learn. But if somebody told me that the world was a particular way, I believed them. And so when they told me if you go to college and work hard and study hard, then when you get out, everything will be okay, I just went and did that. And when I graduated, one of the hardest days of my life actually was graduation day because I kind of had a meltdown. I was walking down the aisle looking at all of my friends. I went to a very rich kid school, hoping that it would teach me something about wealth. I grew up in a pretty poor situation, and I was watching all the kids walk around congratulating each other, realizing, oh, the kids that have opportunity here, they're all going to go to friend's daddy's company, and they all made friends. And the curriculum and the professors all told me to work hard. So that's what I did. And I went to two parties that whole time. I stayed sober during both of them because I had homework. And so I obsessively worked. And I came out on the other end with only the things that I had been instructed in because people told me follow instructions. And I got done with that, realizing that I had none of the tools that I needed to survive. So I went back to down to the bottom. I moved to Austin, Texas, slept for a week, and then walked out of the house, walked into the first business that was on the side of the highway by where I lived. They said, "Do you have job application forms?" And they said, "Yes." And I took it. And then I walked out because I was too shy to talk to them anymore. And I went and ate lunch and slept. And then I got out and walked to the next business. I skipped that one because that was far too terrifying. Walked into the next one. I said, "Do you have a job application forms?" And they said, "Yes." "Can you sweep, white boy?" And I said, "Yes, I can sweep." And so I started sweeping floors. And then I started learning the trade from the ex-cons that lived there or worked there. Some of them lived pretty in the parking lots close by. And over the course of 2, 3 years, I became the foreman and the lead instructor at that shop. and eventually transitioned to teaching music and slowly figured out how to make a living as my life devolved in many other ways.
Right.
I tried following other people's instruction on how to eat diet and just got incredibly ill. Got inflammation throughout all my body, got just permanent damage in so many different ways, and many other bits of damage that took many years to repair. And it really didn't start to come together until I lost a close friend to suicide. And I said, okay, well, I need to either make this good or make this bad. And I decided to make this good. And I said, well, what's going wrong here? And I said, okay, well, people keep telling me to go for this big grand vision, set your goals and go for it. And it never works out. And so, what if I took the opposite approach? What if I decided that I was a bit inept? I had no idea what I was doing, and I couldn't achieve any of the goals and dreams that I wanted to achieve. What would I do? And the answer was take a trash bag a week out of the house. And so I did that. Get rid of the junk. And that I kept doing that until I became a minimalist. And I was like, you better keep the 7 shirts. And I kept going with tiny little habits until I started to function again. And I during all these times, I learned all sorts of things. Went deep down the rabbit hole of a meditation and awareness practices and things like that. But ultimately, it came down to I had been a student of learning theory my entire life, but I'd never applied it to myself. And learning theory is not something that tells somebody to have big dreams, have big goals, all those things. Developmental theory is all about baby steps. Developmental theory is all about how do you connect the dots between one piece of knowledge to the next, from one action to the next. It's not the big grand goal that gets you to where you're going. It's not manifestation. It's not vision boards. It's where are you right now and what would make you 0.00001% better. And I started doing that. And I built a life that has, it's pretty great.
So much was said there that I almost don't know where to start. My story, although almost exactly the opposite in some ways, is exactly the same.
Yes,
That
it often is.
I never went to college, but I went out and I got into the career field very early and I started working very, very hard and I started doing all the things and I went and I looked around and I went, I have done all the things I was supposed to do. What the fuck do I do now?
Yes, I one of the top things that I talk about in my work is what I call the flip side of the coin. And so there's so many things in life that people say it's this way when the reality is there's at least two ways that are being balanced and there might be infinite ways. And for a certain set of people, when you tell them it's this way, they can just do it and it works and it makes their life better and everything's okay. There's a reason why we have religion. It works. But for another subset of people, you tell them this way and they do it and they get horrific results. And they need to understand that there are many ways. And one piece of advice works for one person and another piece of advice works for another. And it's life is nuanced. So I'm a big believer in this. It's something I like to talk about a lot. Is what's the nuance that makes all of this wisdom that we try to collect relevant to you?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the other side of that is that I don't know who said this, so I can't quote them, but a saying that I heard coming from the Chris Williamson podcast was that nuance is the new N word. And it's just become such a feature of every conversation. But the other side of that is it's absolutely right. Like, what's the right clothes to wear? Where do you live? What are your preferences? What's the right car to drive? Like, When I lived in the US, I drove a pickup truck. Now that I live in Thailand, I ride a motorcycle. The clothes I wore in North Dakota do not serve me here. And as we as humans shift and change and evolve, even the advice that worked for you 2 years ago might not be the advice that works for you as a person anymore. Nothing can be
Yeah,
all that one size fits all. It's about finding what's right for you in that moment, growing, shifting, changing, and evolving, right?
it's very true. And it's interesting that you said nuance is the new N word. I mean, yes, there's a lot of people that misuse it. And the people who misuse it are saying, basically saying a manipulative no to the thing that they really need to do in life, right? And so here's this basic practical thing that you should be doing. And then somebody goes, oh, well, it's nuanced. And really, that doesn't work in my case, right? It's an escape word. And when nuance is used as an escape word, it's very problematic. And yeah, people use it all the time for that. Um, but when things aren't working, you've got to look at the nuance, right? It's there's something going wrong. Let's go find out what it is. And so, on one hand, you could look at my life. I was somebody who was trying to achieve something really big, and I wasn't paying attention to the little things. And you could say, "Oh, this isn't nuanced at all. You're being irresponsible. Go do the basic things, right?" Because that's what I wasn't doing, and I needed to learn that lesson. But the nuance of it was I had listened to another lesson that's very wise and very commonly said to be just the thing, which is just go balls to the wall in your vision and then everything will work out. And so I was doing that as hard as I could. But I realized, oh, it's more nuanced than that. You can't just do that one thing. And so the what it came to was highly practical, but it came through nuance, seeing that, oh, this doesn't work for me.
Yeah, my own story on that. When I was first becoming a coach, I was watching maybe a little bit too much Alex Hermosi, and his whole thing is do nothing but just work, right? Go out there like you've got the thing, you just put in the time, you put in the hours, and you'll get it done. And although there is truth to that, what that led to for me was a state of burnout where I wasn't actually accomplishing anything and just massive frustration because I had removed every inspiration from my life. Anything that I enjoyed doing, anything that gave me time and space and energy to feel fueled, I had removed. I was like, I'm just going to go become a coach and figure it out and do the things. And when you're in that stuck headspace, how do you expect to help anybody out of it?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's so true. And what's really interesting is he's not wrong when he says do nothing but just work. If you look at the inner wisdom of what he's saying, the nuance of what he's saying, the nuanced version of what he's saying is do nothing except for that which will give you results, and then you will get results,
Yeah.
right? Like that, in essence, is what he's saying. And he's just boiling it down to, well, just work. And then you'll get the output of your work. But when people hear that message, just work, then they try to just work and then they burn out because they don't have a balanced life. They try to just work and then they go insane, or they get hyper focused on something stupid, or they blow up all their relationships and they ignore their diet, like all sorts of other things happen. But when you look at the core thing, which is do nothing except for that which gets you results, all of a sudden you can go, oh, well, what turns me into a hyper functioning individual? Well, in my case, this many hours of sleep, this many hours of laying on the beach, this many hours of hugging my girlfriend, this much nutrients, this much labor. And all of that adds up to output, right? And different people think it's different things, and like some people get super distracted by things that are not the work, right? They get lost in their morning routines where it's like, oh, I need these 5 million things before I start working, and that's the stuff that he preaches against. But ultimately, It's do that which works, and then you will get results. Which comes down to something I really believe in, which is I like to say, do possible things. If you do possible things, you will get results. If you do impossible things,
Yeah.
then you will not. And it's so powerful when you really get this basic thing. Is like do what is possible, and then what you want will occur. And so it's like, is it possible to work 12 hours a day every single day on maximum output and get the results that you want to get? Well, some people can. That's a thing. Um, and then most people just fall apart. The people who can are people who are typically super low neuroticism, usually really high disagreeability. They're also their diet is locked in. And locked in could mean Red Bull and Cheetos all day long. I'm just saying it works for them,
Yep.
right? Like whatever it is, their patterns work. And so if you're in a situation where your patterns are not working, and then you say, well, I'm just going to work 12 hours a day to fix it, you're not going to get any results. Nothing is going to happen. But if you start saying, well, what are the things that will result in me getting output? And then you start doing those things, then you will get outcomes.
Yep.
And so I get people to obsess about this, where I'm like, okay, like look at your plan for the day. Is this task something you can actually get done in 2 hours? If it's not, then why did you allocate 2 hours? You should be allocating 3. It's stupid. It's basic. It's simple. But if you put an impossible thing on your list, you're not going to get a result. And a lot
Right.
of the manifestors and the vision board people will say, oh, well, you've got to like set this extreme goal to motivate yourself. And again, for some people, that's true. But for a lot of people, if you set goals that are bigger than you can accomplish every single day, the only thing you'll end up with at the end of the month is depression. You're just going to feel like a failure because you are. And so for those people, I say do possible things. And then you just have to look at the formula and go like, what are all the things that add up to the results that I want? And for a lot of people, it's like 2 hours of work a day, 4 hours of work a day that's really done well if they're trying to start a business.
Yep.
Sometimes it's 3 hours of hyper intelligent work and 6 hours of dumb labor. And if you can stack those correctly, then you can get the results that you want. And then you go, okay, what would enable me to do 3 hours of intelligent work and 6 hours of dumb labor every single day for 6 months? And you go, oh, well, if I get this many hugs per day, I can manage that. And you go, okay, well, let me make sure to get that many hugs. I am super over the idea of transcending difficulty because there
Yeah.
is infinite difficulty in the world. And I am super into the idea of setting up the environment that would make you win, as opposed to how do I take my fallible self and make myself better so that I can overcome all obstacles, most of which would kill you. Let's be real. Most obstacles in the universe are death. That's a dumb mindset. What if instead you go, what situation would result in me giving creating the best output? And then let me set this up. And so if that's waking up at 6 a.m. and grinding it for 14 hours, great, good for you. That just makes me tired.
I think let's circle that all the way back around to the exact nuance as well of it's going to depend on what you're trying to do and what you're trying to build. My
Yeah.
background was in oil and gas, 12 to 16 hours a day, sometime for 6 weeks on end. And in that environment, I was capable of that output, but I didn't have to maintain mood or mindset or anything. I ran on caffeine, nicotine, and hatred, as many other oil workers did.
Yeah.
And the fuel was, I had the right fuel to get the job done, period. if I tried to bring those same dietary patterns, behavior patterns, attitudes, mindset to a coaching job, you're not going to receive those fucking results. It's just not. It's not going to math out.
Yeah, it's really hard to implement hatred in a counseling session if
Weird
you're
how
the
that
person
works.
doing the counseling.
Yeah.
It's fairly ineffective. And so, yeah, it's like what inputs result in the outputs that you desire. Um, and when I work with people, I go through a series of things that help them discover this because it's unique to different people. So it's like first you need a system for tracking what a success looks like. Like like what does a success look like in your life? Can you identify one? Most people I know, most high performers I know, can't identify what a success looks like in a day. They only can identify what that looks like over the long line of their long-term goals. And so it's like, what would success be in a day? Is it you got these tasks done and you celebrated with your girlfriend by going to get a bagel? And then you went home and you went to bed early, or you went home and you did an extra task? Like, I'm all for working hard. I'm very pro working hard. I like it. But what is it?
Yeah.
Like, as opposed to vague, just do whatever it takes. What is the work? What is success? And then as soon as you start asking that question, people have emotional breakdown. They have no idea what to do because they realize that they don't know. And they
Right.
need a tool for figuring it out. And so then you have to tap somebody into their desire. You have to ask the question, what do you want? And the reality is, most of the people that I work with who are on the high end, they know that they want to create $1 billion market cap. But when you ask them what they want at the ice cream store, they go, I don't care. I don't know. Just like, give me a flavor. They don't know. And they hide behind, oh, it's decision fatigue. But the reality is they've gotten to the point where they don't feel a craving or a desire for mint chocolate chip versus cookie dough. They don't even know. And this is why they get divorced from their wives, is because they're in a relationship with their wife and their wife doesn't feel desired. They just feel like they're with a robot, with an automaton.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, like, why aren't we making love every night like my contract stated that I wanted? And I'm like, well, because contracts aren't a turn on. It
Yeah.
doesn't work. What if you wanted her? And they're like, well, yeah, of course I want her, logically speaking. But it's like, when's the last time you actually felt desire for a specific thing? Like, do you desire to hang out on the couch? Do you desire to go for a walk? Like the stupid little things. And then once you can start to notice those, you can start to go, oh, I desire a specific task. It would be meaningful for me to accomplish this particular thing today. And you go, great, let's start repping on that. Because desire isn't a discovery, it's a skill set. Once you have that, then you can start desiring what you want for a week, what you want for a month. Then your life starts coming together. And so I work with people on clarity oftentimes, but the moment they get clarity, they usually melt down. And so the next thing is like tapping into what's in alignment. And that's a lot of my work, is how to get people into alignment. Masters, gurus, they use all sorts of different words for it. Some people say it's being connected to source. Some people say tapping into your gut, tapping into your intuition. Be more raw, be yourself. Like, just do the thing. Like, there's all sorts of different ways of saying it. But what I found is that people have trouble defining it. And the best definition I've gotten is, it is when reality, desire, action, and result all line up. So you are in tune with reality, and then your desires are in tune with reality such that you can take realistic actions, such that you can get results. And when you have that in place, you become a high performance individual.
So you're one of the best in the world at helping people know what to do next. Why is that such a complicated skill?
Because of how childhood development tends to go. So, when you are a child, you want everything and you want it all at once, which is not possible. And so, one of the first things that happens as you start to grow up is you face the reality of limitations and you get hit with a bunch of no's, right? Don't reach for that thing. No, you can't have that. I really love. I was watching my best friend with his first kid, and um, he walked out the door. No, his wife walked out the door to get the mail, and the baby started crying, and I was like, "Oh, is she upset about? Is the baby upset because he wants to be with his mother?" And he's like, "No, unfortunately, it's a bit more complicated than that. He wants to be with me, but he wants to be with his mother. He wants both things simultaneously. And so if he
Uh,
goes to the mother who's walking out to get the mail, then baby is upset because the father is gone. But if he stays with the father, then he's upset that the mother is gone. And so he wants this thing that is like physically not possible. And this happens like over and over again all over the place until you start to sort out what reality is and you start to accept it and be okay with it. And so in that process, what humans do is they start tamping down on their desires and they start getting less in tune with them because it's painful to want things that you can't have. And so we start to internalize this narrative of, oh, no, you can't have what you want, or what you want is irresponsible. That's a really common narrative that people have. Another one, kind of the more religious one, is humans' wants are naturally bad, right? Your native wants are evil, and only look to that which is right and good, and you have to train yourself to aim towards that which is right and good. What you want is dark and bad and wrong. The reality is you can want all sorts of things, and wanting stuff is trainable. The way I make this make sense is very simple. If you want to touch a hot stove and then you touch a hot stove, now you no longer want to touch a hot stove.
yep.
Ergo, you can change what you want. And so a lot of people treat the urge of desire as an unconscious, unchanging thing that must be controlled, when in fact it's a conscious part of you. It can be a conscious part of you that can adjust and learn and grow. But most of us just ignore it from, puberty onwards and try to do this whole like hyper logical, well, I will just do what is required, and I know that I have this long term goal of this, so let me just try to math all of my motions up to this thing. Instead, what I get people to do is I get people to learn the difference between a good desire and a bad desire. I call them desires versus cravings. A desire is simply something that you want, and when you get it, you are more. And a craving is something that you want, and when you get it, you are less. And so you want to be in a hot tub, eat brownies, eat steak, do a line of coke off a hooker's back, 12 other things, go gambling, start a business, etc., etc. Some of those are good for you and some of them are not,
Yep.
right? Brownies, not so good for you. Steak, also delicious, much better for you,
Yep.
right? Like hooking up with a whole bunch of random people, not so great. Sitting in a hot tub, really solid, right? You want all of these things. And if you start acting on your desires, you're going to start to be informed. You're going to do some things that get you good results and some things that get you bad results.
Right.
And so I train people on a meditation actually of acting on desire. And it doesn't have to go wildly out of control. You can do this in your home as a meditation where you just sit down and ask yourself the question, what do you want? And you give yourself a half hour to an hour to meditate on that thing. And what you do is you don't meditate on what you want over the next 10 years. You don't meditate on your life plan. You meditate on what you want now. And what's going to happen is you're going to go, well, I want brownies. And you go, okay, well, I know that brownies aren't great for you. So, like, that's not quite what we're going for right now. That's a craving. What else would you want? And you go, well, I want my fifth cigarette of the day. It's like, well, okay, not quite what we're looking here for. What else do you want? It's like, man, I've been indoors all the time. I really just really want to feel the sun on my face. You go, great. Walk outside immediately. Feel the sun on your face. Enjoy it. Sit back down and go, okay, you wanted something. You got it. You can get things that you want. What else do you want? And you just repeat this. You do this for an hour. Do this for an hour every day for a week and your life will be changed. Because you'll notice that you actually have specific things that you desire that you can go after, and you can learn to go after it with a passion because you know that you are authentically steering in the correct direction. Because most people hide what they want because they think it's bad. But if instead you switch to a conscious understanding of what you want, and then you start to channel the things that you want in the correct direction, now you have the opportunity to start to get into alignment. And so to answer your early question, why do people have trouble figuring out what to do? It's because they're not tapped into that thing. They're not tapped into that desire. They're not tapped into noticing what they want. And so as a result, everything has to be a logical decision. Everything has to be a process of decision making. And that's time consuming and hard, and you could be right or you might not. If you're tapped into what you want, first of all, it's always right. It might not be good, but it's always true.
Right.
Right? Your desire never lies, ever. That's a beautiful thing. Is one of the few truly honest things in existence. Is when you want something, you just want it. It's fact. And no one can debate it, ever. You might find out that it's really bad and you don't want it at all later. But the moment that you want it, it's true. And truth is in high demand in our existence. It's hard to get a hold of truth. We have a lot of data, but we don't have a lot of things that we are like, yes, this is absolutely certain. I have no doubts about it. And so if you can tap into something that you have no doubts about, first of all, your anxiety and indecision and just overall neuroticism just drops like crazy. It gets way better. And then if you learn to take action on that thing, then again, your neuroticism is going to drop again because now you're acting on truthful things. So you don't have to do a whole bunch of thinking about, well, like, is this right? Is this right for me or is that right for me? No, you're literally just doing the thing that you want. And then once you do that, then you start getting results on the things that you want, and you start finding out whether they're good or bad. Now you start learning at a deep, deep level. And it's interesting because when you act on things that you truly desire and you get a positive or negative result, you learn faster than if you go and do a bunch of logic about, well, what is best for me? And then let me do this. Because when you do that, you're up in the clouds making a bunch of decision making, not really feeling it. And then you go get a result and you go, well, was this my execution or was it the thing that I didn't know if I wanted this thing, or is this true or not true? You just start ruminating about a bunch of different questions, and it's hard to integrate the knowledge. But if you just want a thing and then you take an action and you get a result, the result pings off of your consciousness and deep in your psyche in a way that makes you learn really faster because you're like, oh, I wanted this, and then I did this, and now I am miserable.
Yeah.
I don't want this anymore. I don't like this,
Yep.
right? And you go, oh, okay. Fact. I have learned something new. And that's so valuable. And then you do another thing and you get a fantastic result and you go, I love this. This is more of this, please. And so when you're tapped into what you desire, you learn faster. That's why I'm good at helping people figure out what to do. Is I'm good at helping people sort through this.
You coach a lot on overthinking, and I can really see how the power of doing that can help people who are really stuck in that logic state, who are just sitting there ruminating, cycling over and over again, of just eliminate this barrier of thought of, do I want this? Yes, no, act. Do I want this? Yes, no, act. Do I want this? Yes, no, act. And just creating this repetitious behavior, like absolute
Yes.
game changer.
Yes, it can change your life. And then the objection you always get for this is, my goodness, well, if I'm not considering, if I'm not ruminating on these things, then what if I make the wrong decision? And that comes down to one of the other core components of how a human develops is they take a small enough step that they could integrate the result. And so the other piece of this is learning how to take smaller steps in your life, it's not about doing less action. It's not about less overall results. It's about breaking things up, the steps into tinier chunks, so that you can do a yes no act where the risk of the thing that you would take action on is low enough that if the result is bad, it's not going to take you out of the game of life, right? If your yes no act is whether or not I'm going to invest $3 billion into this next project and you've only got $4 billion, then yes no act is going to be a pretty difficult sell. But if you are managing $4 billion and your yes no act is at 100K a pop to get yourself to make sense of this concept, well, you can do this a bunch and get in tune with what you're doing to start to make sense of it and then scale it up. And at the same time, if you're, at a different stage of life, like let's say you're wildly depressed and you just have a regular job and you're struggling, well, your yes no act can be literally something as simple as like, how do I spend my weekend? Like, do I get out of bed now? Yes, no act. Do I take a shower? No, now. Yes, no act. Do I hang out with my friends or do I stay at home with my girlfriend? Yes, no act. Do I hang out with this group of friends or this group of friends? Yes, no act. Whatever it is, you just practice at the level that you can.
Right.
And if you practice it, you become more decisive over time just by practicing it. And then you scale it up.
Also circling that back around to, what if I make the wrong decision? Ultimately, it can be argued that there is no wrong decision, right? There is only the decision that you make, especially when you're coming at this from an avenue of, I need to learn. Get out there and learn. Make mistakes. Eat the wrong food that's going to hurt your stomach. Go out there and get a sunburn. Like, these things, ultimately, although they have less than ideal outcomes, are not the wrong decisions. It's just information. It's only the decision that you made. Now you have more information to continue onward.
Yeah, take as many decisions as possible that will inform you without taking you out of the game.
What's one belief that you wish you could delete from everyone's brains immediately?
Oh, man. I don't know if there's a belief that I would delete, but there are some universal understandings I would want people to have. One would be understanding static mindset versus growth mindset, which is there's one way of thinking, which is I am either good or bad at this, and another, which is if I work on this, I can get better. And you need to know when to apply which belief. And the other, I would say, is the awareness of negativity bias. I did a write up on what I thought were like some of the most dangerous things on earth or the most damaging things on earth. I'd say at the top is probably inflation.
Yeah.
I can't think of anything much more harmful than stealing from an entire populace. And it's 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 so subtle, so nuanced, and intentionally complex and misunderstood that people don't even talk about it. And so it's like people are, getting their entire lives stolen from them without even realizing that it's happening, and they're busy arguing and bitching about a bunch of like unimportant things. Like people are talking about the population crisis. You want to fix the population decline? Just stop stealing from everybody, and then they'll make more babies. Like this is so not complicated.
Make things more
Um,
livable.
yeah, yeah. This is not hard in terms of like concepts here. Is stealing is bad,
Yep.
And then I'd say sugar and social media are pretty dangerous, pretty up there. I don't think they compare even remotely to inflation. I think, and I'd say social media is actually pretty way down. Sugar potentially is the next one, I'd say, after inflation, because it's like the most acceptable drug. But on that list, the one thing that was like a feature, not a bug, sort of a thing, I'd say is negativity bias. Negativity bias is so dangerous, and then also humans have to have it. So negativity bias is the tendency to see the downside of something. And this is needed because we need to avoid death, right? So you need to, as a, evolutionary hunter gatherer or whatever, you need to look at a bush and think there might be a lion behind that bush. Because if you don't, then you'll die. You need to think that. It's a very important. You need to think, well, around that corner, there might be a cliff that if I rush around that corner, I might just fall off. That's very important to think that thought. And that at its core is what negativity bias is like, well, if I do this, there's also this negative possibility. The problem is, as you scale up your life, negativity bias becomes more and more of a damaging thing and less helpful. For example, in the modern world, we know that pessimists are right more often and optimists make more money. This is very well established. Like most optimists make more money than pessimists 100% of the time. Optimists are going to have better relationships. Optimists are going to have basically, they're going to have better lives across every single metric if they avoid death, bankruptcy, and other truly uh, game-ending experiences in their life. So pessimists have the capacity to avoid things like bankruptcy, not divorce. Pessimism is going to actually cause a lot of divorce, but death. It's gonna help you keep your children alive. But pessimism isn't going to help you uh, create a great relationship with your kids. It's not going to help you build a giant business. It's not going to help you create a fulfilling life. And so pessimism, negativity bias is fantastic for risk aversion, but very bad for opportunity creation. It's a weird one because it's baked into the human psyche and it's necessary. But to get humans past a certain level, it has to be kind of understood and then kept in a way, but sort of let go of. Meaning, you still have to be aware of bad things that happen, but you have to let go of the possibility that they could occur. Meaning, you have to become more unattached to it, where you go, okay, yeah, these bad things could occur. And let me set up a couple things in my life to guard against that. But let me put 99% of my bandwidth on the positive thing that could occur. And so to me, that's actually one of the more challenging things when you look into it. It's like that's actually really complicated. How do you deal with the fact that there is a mindset thing that is required for survival? It's absolutely necessary, but it hampers you along the way in your growth. It's a complex one. And the way I've addressed this in my personal life, and I've seen this be really useful for people, is to channel pessimism towards optimism. And so what I mean by that is let yourself think a pessimistic thought. Let yourself be negative in terms of you go to a situation and you go, "Oh, this bad thing could happen." But as soon as you think about this bad thing could happen, then you think, "What positive thing could I do that would get me a positive result that would also guard against the negative?"
Right.
And the way this is different from the way most pessimists think is they think solely about guarding against the negative instead of the thing that would make their life better. And so, what I mean by this is let's take economics again. I'm very pro Bitcoin. I could invest in gold, right? Gold guards you against inflation. But do I think that gold is going to get me a lot of opportunity in, like, do I think that gold is going to appreciate at a massive level and make me a lot of money? Not really. Gold has historically been pretty stable over the generations. And so it would be a way for me to guard against inflation. But I'm pro Bitcoin because even if the economy does great and we stop inflating the currency, the economy does not crash, I still think Bitcoin is going to be successful. Bitcoin will do great if the economy does great. But also, if the economy fails, Bitcoin is what would help me guard against an economy failing. And so basically, like, the logic here is aim towards the thing that if things go well, you win, and if things go bad, you win, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to, well, things are probably going to go bad, so let me figure out a way for that to not go bad. And so it's being solutions oriented as opposed to problem oriented. And it's subtle, and people have a hard time getting this. But this is the difference between people that, make a whole lot of money and people that spend their time, putting beans in their bunker and in the basement. Is like, okay, yes, you can guard against a nuclear event, but how is that helping you live a good life today? It's not. It's
Yeah.
just avoidance of that which is bad. And so I really encourage people to, when they have negative thoughts, to go, okay, I'm having these negative thoughts. What positive thing could I aim towards that would mitigate the negative thoughts, but also add to my life? And sometimes I like even flipping it, where you go like, okay, what would add to my life that just by the nature of this adding to my life would also mitigate this negative thing, like almost as a side effect.
Yeah.
That's the most powerful frame I've found for somebody who's trying to really level up in life to get through negativity bias, because being a pessimist can truly make you miserable. It can destroy your life in other ways. It's weird though, because you need a degree of pessimism. You need a degree of spotting what could go wrong, but you need to have a way to address it. And so that's the most powerful way I've found to address it.
Absolutely. We all have to be able to navigate life's problems, right? We all have to learn to navigate those in our own way. And as we have these biological traits of mindset being a problem, especially in our day and age where our lives are not in danger all that often, it's not very often that we have to worry about starving to death or lions behind a bush or running off a cliff, right? So that negativity bias and that fear mostly just serves to keep people stuck. And
Yes.
alongside mitigating risk, it's talking about taking risks that have a disproportionate upside compared to their downside, right? Is it best to create a win-win situation? Absolutely. However, when that's not an available option, look at what you can achieve if things go well versus what you would lose if things go badly, and build your life in that frame as well, right?
Yeah, I'll leave it with this is I really recommend people reading books on investors and the way investors think. For example, I heard this once where somebody said, he's a very well-known investor, I can't remember who, but if I am right, I get a 5x return, and if I am wrong, I get a 2x return. Meaning he makes investments where if he's right about the investment, he wins big, and then if he is wrong about the investment, he doesn't fail. He just doesn't win as much as he would have or could have. And that frame is incredibly powerful. And I work with a lot of high performers in a lot of different spaces. I actually do work with some investors, but like business owners, executives, and I encourage business owners to think like investors because I think that business owners are investors, entrepreneurs, they're investors. They're just investing their own time, they're investing their attention, they're investing VC capital, they're investing the resources of employee time. Like this, it's all resource allocation. And so when you're building a business, you want to think like an investor. Like, okay, how much of my own personal attention do I allocate to this particular thing? What sort of outcome would I get? If you think this way, that alone is valuable. But if you then start to go, okay, like if I allocate my time here and things don't work out the way I hoped, am I just going to have wasted a week? Or will I have learned 5 incredibly useful things that will help me pivot and do this thing over here? Because there's
Right.
some choices you can make that if you invest your time in that location, you're gonna, just like it's just a dead end if it doesn't work. Like it could be a cool opportunity, but if it doesn't work, it's just like wasted time. There's other
Yep.
things that are like super related to other stuff that you're working on, and if you don't get quite the result you want, you're still 3 steps ahead in your business. And
Yep.
so make more of those choices. Make more of the choices that are like, okay, yes, let me guard against negative outcomes. Yes, let me go for good outcomes. But like, how can I set it up so that it's like, this is a choice that it's going to be good for me regardless. That mindset is super powerful.
Absolutely. Everything can be changed if you only want to change it, right? Josh, thanks so much for coming on and talking with me today. For people who want to connect with you, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, find me everywhere on social media at Josh Terry Plays. And then if you find it would be of value to work with me, then go to apply.joshterryplays.com.
Sweet. And there will be links down in the comment section below.
Amazing.